Armin Meiwes was born on December 1st, 1961, a German man who had a fetish for cannibalism. What would make this story all the more interesting was that he would find a man on the now deleted site known as the Cannibal Cafe, who voluntarily allowed Armin to kill and eat him in 2001. Allegedly inspired by the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel as a young boy, eventually leading him to find the now infamous forum site known as the Cannibal Cafe, a site designed for people to discuss their cannibalism fetishes. It was on this site Armin would put out a request looking for a well-built 18 to 25-year-old to be slaughtered and then consumed. And that is a quote. Honestly speaking, I thought everyone interested in cannibalism would be the consumer, not the consumee, but allegedly Armin received many responses to this ad, although most would back out. Armin was okay with it. He wanted a willing participant and was not intending to force anyone to do anything. That is when this man came along, a 43-year-old who worked as an engineer in Berlin, Germany. The man would come to Armin's house and consume around 20 sleeping pills and a bottle of cough syrup, at which point he would request that Armin attempt to bite off his penis. When this was deemed to be too hard, it would then be amputated and consumed by both men, first raw and then cooked, eventually being burnt, at which point it would be chopped up and fed to Armin's dog. The man would then be placed in the bath, where he slowly drifted in and out of consciousness, and Armin would read a Star Trek novel in the other room. Eventually, however, he would return, pray, and stab the man in the throat before putting him onto a meat hook. Over the next 10 months, Armin would consume roughly 44 pounds or 20 kilograms of the man's flesh, and wouldn't be captured until he was reported to police after putting out an ad looking for a second victim. Police would arrest him and search his home, where they would find a 4-hour-long tape of the events that evening, footage that has been deemed too graphic to release to the public. It is unclear where the footage is now, but given the fact that Germany has been known to ban most movies or shows referencing Armin, it is likely that the footage has been destroyed. Armin would ultimately be sentenced to only 8 years in prison, most likely due to the fact that the victim allegedly showed clear consent, most likely something the courts were not prepared to incorporate. However, roughly 3 years into his sentence, the court had decided that they did not properly handle the trial, as well as certain evidence, and retried him, for which he would be given a life sentence, after a psychologist said he was in danger of reoffending. Despite this, Armin himself claims to have become a vegetarian, and expressed a desire to write a book to deter others from going down the same path as him. Although the status of these tapes are currently unknown, 4 screenshots have allegedly appeared online, but have never been confirmed as being genuine. Timothy Treadwell was an American bear enthusiast and filmmaker who spent around 12 years living among the bears in Alaska. Born Timothy William Dexter, Timothy always expressed a love for animals since a young age, even reportedly having a squirrel as a pet. After a near-fatal drug overdose, Treadwell was convinced to travel to Alaska for a summer to study bears at a national park. After he did, he claimed to feel a connection with the bears and declared it as his life's calling. He would end up getting very close to these bears throughout the years, even reportedly touching them and playing with their cubs. After he began to see the same bears return again and again, he felt he had formed some kind of relationship with them built on respect and trust. It was during these exhibitions that Treadwell would record hundreds of hours of footage of the bears, sometimes alongside various women he was dating at the time. This ultimately began to make him a sort of celebrity in the animal scene, being invited on The Late Show with David Letterman and appearing several times on the Discovery Channel. He would also co-write a book entitled Among Grizzlies, Living with Wild Bears in Alaska. However, things were not all sunshine and daisies, as others were quick to point out that Treadwell was breaking just about every park rule in terms of keeping a distance from animals, harassing them, and more. In October of 2003, Treadwell and his girlfriend Amy visited the national park, but after a dispute over the cost of the flight home, both decided to stay for an extra week. During that time, Treadwell would make a call to a friend, but did not express any concern. When an air taxi arrived on October 6th to retrieve them, they would find their camp abandoned, and park rangers would soon find the remains of Treadwell and his girlfriend Amy. Reportedly, they managed to find Treadwell's disfigured head, spine, right forearm, and hand with his watch still on it. Amy's remains were also close by, partially buried under some twigs. The park rangers would be attacked by a bear while on site, which they would kill, and after doing a necropsy on scene, find remains inside the bear's stomach. They would also find a video camera that captured no footage, either from being in a bag, at night, with the lens cap being left on, but with audio that began as "Come out here, I'm being killed out here," followed by about 6 minutes of screaming as the two are mauled to death by the bear. Treadwell would be criticized by some for having been known to not take even the most basic safety precautions, such as bringing some kind of pepper or bear spray, or putting an electric fence up around the camp, which were both things that were expected of campers in the area. Despite this, they would also declare his devotion to the bears commendable, but his eventual death expected. The audio has never been released to the public, but does exist, and is in the possession of Jewel Pelivac, a friend of Treadwell who co-wrote the book with him. The audio is mentioned in a movie about Treadwell named Grizzly Man, in which the audio is played for the filmmaker through headphones, and afterward, he instructs her to never listen to the audio, and even suggests destroying it. It is clear that she has no intention to ever let this audio get out, despite the fact several unconfirmed alleged leaks exist online. Paul Bernardo was a Canadian serial killer known for having teamed up with his then, at the time, wife, Carla Halmalkin, for the assault and murder of 3 women. Paul grew up in a less than hospitable environment in which he allegedly witnessed his father assault his older sister. However, Paul was always able to keep a happy and charming outward appearance, eventually leading him to be very successful at picking up girls at bars with his friends. However, his interests were less than gentle, and by 1986, he had at least 2 restraining orders from other women. In October of 1987, he would meet Carla, who allegedly encouraged his sadistic behavior, and while together, would allow Paul to assault several women, ranging from around the age of 21 to as young as 14. Wikipedia lists 14 assaults and 6 attempted assaults, but the true number is unknown. Another man would be charged and found guilty of one of these assaults, serving over 16 months in prison before being exonerated when Paul eventually confessed. But before then, in July of 1990, after an eyewitness account led police to believe Paul resembled the attacker, he would be interviewed by police and willingly offer a DNA sample. But for some reason, it was never tested. Paul would also begin to form a fixation with Carla's younger sister, Tammy, whom Carla would assist Paul in drugging and assaulting. The couple would also film the entire encounter. However, Tammy would vomit and not wake up, eventually dying as a result. Despite some strange occurrences like the noting of the chemical burn around Tammy's mouth where they had placed a drug-soaked rag, the death would be ruled an accident, and while the rest of the family was away grieving, Paul and Carla would have intercourse, while Carla dressed as and pretended to be Tammy. Almost a year later, Paul would stumble across a girl who had been locked out of her house, named Leslie, whom he would kidnap and bring home. Again, the couple would assault the girl while filming it, but this time, a blindfold she was wearing would slip, leading the couple to believe she could potentially identify them. From this point, Carla claims Paul had strangled the victim, while Paul claims Carla had injected her with a lethal dose of drugs. The truth is unknown, but the couple would end up encasing her body parts in cement and make several trips to dump her into a lake. These blocks would be discovered on June 29, 1991, the same day the couple got married. On April 16, 1992, the two would go out together purposely looking for another victim, where they would find Kristen French. After being kidnapped at knife point, she too would be assaulted and taped, this time the footage showing that she was never wearing a blindfold, which led prosecutors to suggest that they had never intended to let her live, despite Paul's claim he was always intending to let the girls go. Again, the two offered contradicting stories on who initiated and carried out the murder. You may be wondering why the two are arguing about who killed the victim. Well, that is because in December of 1992, the DNA Paul had willingly given over 26 months prior was tested and came back a match. After being questioned by police, Carla would inform them that he was abusing her as well, and even told her aunt and uncle that night that he had committed those crimes, including the murders of the two girls, and that it was all on video. However, only a small piece of video footage was found, leading to a plea deal to be made in which Carla would testify against Paul in exchange for 12 years in jail. Months later, after the deal was agreed upon, more footage would be discovered that had been hidden in a light fixture and subsequently hidden by Paul's lawyer, which showed clear proof Carla was not some abused woman, but a willing participant in the crimes. However, the deal was already made, and in 2005, she was released from prison. Paul, on the other hand, was still imprisoned, and after facing multiple failed attempts at parole, and being given a status as a dangerous offender, likely will be for the rest of his life. Obviously, due to the insanely graphic nature of the footage, and frankly speaking, illegal content, it has never been released and likely never will. Carla has since changed her name, remarried, and had children, but her deal shall always remain controversial. Locals even often protesting or complaining to schools if rumors started that she had moved to their area. Dawn Brancho was a 40-year-old trainer at SeaWorld in Orlando, Florida. She would often perform shows like Dine with Shamu with the orca Tilikum. All the while, she was known to record her performances so that she could watch them back and correct mistakes she made. But on February 24th, 2010, as the show with Tilikum was coming to an end, the orca would manage to grab onto Dawn and drag her into the water. Multiple eyewitnesses who saw this debate on just how she was grabbed, with some saying that Tilikum grabbed onto her arm, her shoulder, or what is more commonly referenced, her ponytail. SeaWorld workers would attempt to contain Tilikum as well as throw in food to distract him, but ultimately, he would hold Dawn under the water for around 45 minutes before she was eventually released. The end result, of course, was an autopsy confirming that she had drowned, but also mentioned blunt force trauma she had faced, including a fractured jawbone, a severed spine, and her scalp being ripped off. There was also some reports saying that one of her arms had been eaten. The Lost Media Wiki refers to this footage as partially found due to the fact that some footage would allegedly appear in the documentary Blackfish, one that had brought worldwide scrutiny to SeaWorld. However, SeaWorld would not take this line down and began to suggest that it was Dawn's fault she was attacked due to the fact that she had that ponytail, despite the fact other trainers who had never been attacked also had one. Since the attack, Tilikum returned to performing about a year later. However, this time with new safety precautions, including the fact that trainers now had to interact with the orca through a barrier. But surprisingly, Dawn was not the first person killed by Tilikum, as on July 6, 1999, a homeless man managed to hide in the park overnight and would end up jumping into Tilikum's tank, where he would die sometime during that night. SeaWorld again would move to blame the victim, even making gross comments about him being a dirty and unhygienic man who mumbled and wandered aimlessly around the park. There is allegedly no footage of the tank, but the homeless man, later identified as 27-year-old Daniel Dukes, is frequently referenced as Tilikum's second victim. Because before that, on February 20th, 1991, Tilikum was owned by a theme park called Sealand of the Pacific. A part-time Canadian animal trainer named Kelty Byron slipped and fell into the pool with Tilikum, who allegedly grabbed her foot and held her underwater until she drowned. As a result of this incident, the theme park was closed the following year and sold Tilikum to SeaWorld. Tilikum would continue to perform and later died in 2017 as the result of a bacterial infection. To this day, it is unknown if the footage of Dawn is owned by SeaWorld, her family, a third party, or is destroyed altogether. And it is likely that the answer may never be known. I was in Orlando just about 2 months ago, and while there, I made a conscious decision to not stop at SeaWorld. On December 14th, 2012, a 20-year-old named Adam Lanza entered Sandy Hook Elementary School, shooting and killing 6 adults and 20 children before using the weapon on himself. He also killed his own mother before leaving for the school. Adam was considered a loner, not having very many friends, and the ones he did allegedly being those online who shared an interest in mass murder. Ultimately, the motive of his attack is unknown and has left many questioning why it even happened in the first place. But would you guess that it has also left people wondering if it happened? Security footage of Adam inside the school and during the shooting have never been released by police, but the simple fact that it is being withheld by police have left some to theorize that there is a conspiracy afoot. In actuality, the police have stated that they refuse to release the footage due to the graphic nature of what was recorded, and say that they are unsure as to why anyone would want to view content like that. But that has not stopped people like Nobody Died at Sandy Hook authors James Fetzer and Mike Palasek, who lost a defamation case after claiming a father faked the death of his own son, or perhaps more commonly known, Alex Jones, who claimed that the events were a hoax and was ordered to pay over $900 million to the parents of the victims. The school was eventually demolished and a new one built on its grounds, but that did not stop those interested from continuing their hunt, with hackers even breaching the security cameras in 2021, although the motive for this is also unknown, whether that be because they were attempting to locate the old footage or just to cause an uproar. it is likely that footage like that will not be released. And as similar events continue to seem to happen, similar footage will also be blocked from public viewing. Well, that's it for now. Please consider liking the video to help the algorithm and subscribing to see more content like it. If you enjoyed this video, check out this one where I talk about 5 other videos you aren't allowed to watch. I'll see you next time.